Hello friends, welcome to this session on scheduling appointments and a secretary's duties related to appointments. Today, we will be studying scheduling of appointments, how to write an email to schedule an appointment, 10 tips for appointment scheduling, and the secretary's roles and responsibilities before, during and after the appointment. To start with, what is an appointment? The Cambridge English Dictionary defines appointment as a formal arrangement to meet or visit someone at a particular time and place. In the context of office management and secretarial practice, it is a meeting set for a specific date and time. This meeting is between your boss and some other people that your organization shares a professional relationship with. So, during this session, we will be using the words appointment and meeting interchangeably. Let us start with appointment scheduling. Back in the days, there were clear delineations between administrative and professional roles. Secretaries existed expressly to fetch coffee and serve lunch. Today, the once clear lines between administrative and professional roles have changed. Today, it is not only common to ask a secretary to schedule an appointment with important guests, it arguably commands a degree of respect and aptitude. Have you heard of the company called Boeing? It is a huge aircraft manufacturer, right? So, when a boss asks his secretary to schedule an important meeting with Boeing executives, it is a reflection of the secretary's competence. It's like saying, you are capable of interacting with all these important people and you can handle this, so please go ahead and do it. Yet, the honor goes hand in hand with the misery of being in charge of the administrative tasks involved. After all, how in the world is a secretary supposed to find a time that works for 14 professionals across 3 firms in 2 different time zones? This is what makes scheduling appointments a challenging task in a secretary's role. Coordinating calendars can become treacherous if not handled wisely. Let us take a look at all the pointers you must consider as a secretary while scheduling appointments. The first and most important question to ask is this: whose priorities come first? Who is the most important person to schedule the meeting around? If you work in the client service business, the answer is easy: the client comes first. If you are including members of your own team along with outside vendors or service providers, then the most senior person in your organization typically holds importance. It will vary from person to person, from company to company. Example, if you are a lawyer trying to get 3 managing partners on the line, you will generally have to tap dance delicately to make sure all 3 are held in similar regard. Sometimes you may be unsure. If you are unsure, go ahead and ask your manager. Who is the most critical person that needs to attend, whose schedule I should accommodate first? Try and offer your own suggestions of what you think that order of precedence should be and why. Once you know your hierarchy, you have 2 options for proceeding. First option, what works for you? You can ask the members, here are 3 times that work for the team. Please let us know which is best for you. Often, there are 1 or 2 VIPs on a call who everyone else needs to accommodate. In that case, start your search with that person's assistant and ask for several times that will work for them. Then go back to the rest of your team with the possibilities and ask which one works best for everyone. You may have to side with the majority in this case. Second option, here are some times that work. The second option is to query your internal team first and then reach out to your client or external participants with 2 or 3 options of dates and times that work. This option still puts the priority party in the driver's seat but sets the table for them. You are messaging that they have first choice of a date, time, but you have already worked out the back channels to ensure that those options work for your team. The caution is that if none of the times you mention work for the other party, you need to give them a free hand to suggest an alternative. Then you and your team must scramble, change adjust priorities to meet the client's needs. You've done your best to make the meeting work on your terms, but sometimes it's just not possible. Also, don't ask all attendees blindly for times that work. It's too ambiguous and open-ended. Give your team some ideas, options that they can respond to. It will prompt them to check their calendars and really make sure Tuesday afternoon is open or Monday before 11 am works well. Don't commit to a date or time without making sure you have a sign off from the key players. You don't want to go back to a senior person and tell them their preferred date and time doesn't work. One more important point to keep in mind is to keep a paper trail. Save emails with people's availability to make sure you cover your bases in the event someone comes back and complains about a time they had agreed to before. Alright friends, are you with me? We have just seen how to schedule an appointment. Now, since the advent of electronic communications, many business offices have adopted email as a means of communication due to its efficient and fast delivery. In fact, most people deem it so effective that everything is managed electronically, including appointments, inter-office memorandums and meetings. Because of email's widespread use, it's easy to forget simple guidelines for writing a traditional letter through electronic means. Almost every business organization corresponds through email and local network connections. Even so, you may find writing an email meeting invitation a bit daunting. This is especially true when you are doing it for the first time. You may be wondering, in today's world of technology, how do I write an email to schedule a meeting of my boss with someone else's boss? It's a good doubt. Let's discuss this. To write an email to schedule a meeting between your boss and someone else's boss, it is important to first establish whether or not the VIP the email is intended for appreciates being emailed directly. The way to find this out is to research his company online to see if he has an executive assistant. You can also phone his company directly to find out who manages his email. This is also a good way to confirm the contact details of the VIP and also get an idea of how officially or casually he or she likes to be dealt with. Before you write the email, you should also procure the dates and times that work best for him for a meeting and if possible get 3 options. This might spare a great deal of back and forth emailing at a later point in time. The most courteous way to begin the text of this email is to ask the VIP, what date and time works best for you? You then secondly state times that work well for your boss, as in, here are the dates and times that work best for us. Once the VIP or his assistant has agreed to a time to meet, be sure to confirm that time yet once again with your boss. Then send back yet one more confirmation email to make sure that the details are confirmed. Alright, great. Let us move ahead and see some sample emails. Let us consider a scenario where you want to fix a general meeting and wish to draft a meeting inviting managers to that meeting. How would you do that? Here's how. Dear Mr. Miss ABC, there will be a meeting on 20th February 2017 at 3 p.m. in conference room number 4 at our Bandra office. The subject will be new machines to be purchased next quarter. Although the meeting is not mandatory, it is encouraged that you try to attend. Please reply with a response on whether you can attend as soon as possible. Sincerely, Mr. Miss XYZ, Secretary to the Director. Friends, before you begin writing that email meeting invitation, you should be familiar with email culture and etiquette. Email etiquette. As a secretary, you cannot treat your professional email the same as your personal email. It should be strictly for business purposes only. It should not contain office gossip or jokes. Basically, anything that is too personal. Email in the office is used mainly for scheduling meetings, memos, information dissemination within the office and other communication pertaining to your work. There are 2 basic rules that you should consider in email culture. Rule 1. Always respond. Electronic mail that contains issues, information or questions regarding performance of office related tasks should be answered ASAP, as soon as possible. Have a separate folder for junk and forwarded messages. Rule 2. Keep it short. Keep in mind that in the office, you are not the only one sending a message to the expected participants of the meeting. Going through an inbox that contains many emails will consume substantial time in responding to them. By keeping your message concise and simple, you will get the answer you require faster. Emails with long messages are often archived to review later, especially when the recipient is busy. So if you need an answer right away, try asking personally first. If that isn't possible, write a short email. Now, I wish to throw some light on secretary's role in the context of scheduling appointments and ensuring that the meeting goes smoothly and gets documented accurately. In the course of your career, as well as in other times of your life, you may well be asked to take the minutes of a meeting. You may even be asked to take on a formal role as a secretary to a group or organization, whether voluntary or as a paid position. In this capacity, it is essential that you know what needs to be done and are able to take clear and accurate notes. Why am I saying this? I am saying this because the role of a secretary is primarily to create an official record of the meeting. Not just this, but in any formal group, the role is to be guardian of the process of meetings. The secretary is usually the person who makes the arrangements for the meetings, including annual general meetings, and keeps formal records of the group's process and decisions, the minutes of the meetings. This may include keeping records of correspondence. Let us take a look at 10 important tips on making appointments. Number 1. Keep 2 appointment diaries going at the same time. One should be kept in your manager's office, so he/she has easy access to the appointments, and the second in your office. Number 2. Don't make appointments for your boss at times that he likes to keep aside for routine tasks. Consider his time management style. Periods that are not considered effective for meetings are Monday mornings, days before and after long weekends and bank holidays, and immediately prior to lunch times and in the late afternoons. Number 3. Keep appointment times down to what you judge to be an acceptable minimum of time. If they run over, they will not have proved to be unduly time consuming. Number 4. Choose days and times carefully and always check the other events of the day or week surrounding the proposed appointment to judge whether the time can be given to the appointment. Number 5. Remember that your boss has other priorities and commitments throughout the day. Try not to overcommit him/her to too many appointments on a single day. Number 6. Make a note in your diary to gather the relevant information and documents for your boss to peruse before the meeting. Number 7. Remind your boss of other commitments for the day and find plausible excuses to rescue them from appointments which are taking up too much time. Of course, they will always let you know if they want the appointment to carry on. Number 8. Clearly note the name, designation and organization of the member and a reason for the appointment when noting a date in the diary. Number 9. Remember that in many cases there are other members of your department or office team who may be called upon to receive visitors in order to relieve pressure on the manager. Number 10. Be aware of hospitality expectations and ask if refreshments are required. Friends, while doing all this, I want you to always remember that your manager's diary is confidential and should not be easily accessible to everyone. The secretary's responsibility. Let us focus on the formal aspects of the secretary's role and particularly that relating to appointments. The responsibilities are divided into 3 phases. First, before the appointment, second, during the appointment, and third, after the appointment. We will go through each phase in detail now. Preparation before the appointment. There are a number of things that the secretary needs to know before a meeting. most of which can easily be found out by asking the person who is supposed to chair the meeting. Let me share some important questions with you. First of all, who is expected to make the arrangements for the meeting, including finding a venue and arranging for suitable refreshments and any audio visual facilities? This is often the secretary. Next, who is responsible for preparing the agenda? Each chair will have their own preference, but this is also usually a secretarial responsibility working with the chair. There may be other people who have a right to add items to the agenda. The secretary has a role in making sure that the agenda is not overloaded, which may include discussing with the chair and others what could be postponed to a later meeting and what could be covered in a written report. Next, what type of notes or minutes are required? Do they need to be formal minutes that set out who said what, or brief notes that record the agreed actions? Next, how quickly do notes or minutes need to be produced and circulated after the meeting? Next, what is the process for clearing the notes for publication? Some chairs like to approve minutes before they are sent further, while others prefer them to be circulated to several key attendees at the same time. If you are new to your role as a secretary, it is also worth finding out who is expected to attend, the organizations that they represent, and some of the issues which have been raised at previous meetings. This will help you understand what's going on. You can do this by looking at past minutes of meetings and also asking the chair what is likely to be discussed. Friends, it is also important to note that the secretary is responsible for sending out the papers for the meeting. This will include, but is not limited to, the agenda, the minutes of the last meeting, and any papers for discussion or information. On the day of the appointment. On the day of the appointment, there are several things that the secretary will need to do. What are those? Let us see one by one. Make sure that you know who is expected to attend the meeting. If the building has security guards, you may need to provide a list of attendees. Get to the venue early and check that everything is okay. If you are responsible for the meeting arrangements, make sure that everything is there, the room is laid out correctly, all audio visual equipment is working, there are enough chairs, and all refreshments have arrived. You may want to give some thought to who sits where and even mark out a seating plan, as this makes a huge difference to the way that meeting runs. You should ensure that the chair is sitting centrally and that you are seated next to them. Make sure you have plenty of spare copies of papers for those who haven't brought a copy. If there are a lot of papers, it may be appropriate to arrange them in a folder using page and section numbers so that participants can easily find papers related to the current discussion. If you are using name badges, set them out in an alphabetical order on a table by the door where attendees can pick them up as they arrive. Taking the minutes of the meeting. This can be further subdivided into two parts: welcome and introduction and the main business. Welcome and introductions. The minutes will need to include a full list of those present and all those who sent apologies. To save you scribbling frantically as people introduce themselves around the table, circulate a sign up sheet asking people to give their names, organizations, and contact details. Note down any apologies for absence provided during introductions. People often introduce themselves as so and so's replacement, and by the way, he/she sends their apologies. Pay attention to such details so that you can incorporate those in the minutes later. The main business. Now, how you take notes in the meeting depends on how formal the minutes need to be. If you are only reporting a brief summary of the discussion plus any action points, then you can afford to listen to the discussion and then summarize it in note form. If, however, you are expected to write down the main points made by individual speakers, then you will need to make a fuller set of notes including the speakers' names or initials. It is a matter of choice whether you use a laptop or pen and paper to make notes, although it's as well to check with the chair in advance, especially in a paid role. Alright, I am sure you are finding this session interesting. Let us make it more interesting by discussing some handy hints for minute writing. Hint number 1. Develop your own shorthand for keywords or phrases or jargon in your field so that you can just use initials for common phrases. Hint number 2. Use initials to identify speakers in your notes. If you are not sure of the name, use the organization. Nobody will object to being identified as representatives from XYZ organization, but unattributed views could get you in trouble. Hint number 3. If several people make the same point, just add X and Y agreed. Similarly, you can come up with your own handy hints. This will of course take time, but it will be worth it and will improve your efficiency of minute writing to a large extent. Supporting the process. It is the job of the chair to manage the process of the meeting, but there are several things that the secretary can proactively do to help. Let us see which. Quietly pass a note to the chair highlighting any issues with the timing of the agenda or slippage or when coffee is due to arrive. Recap and summarize the discussion. This is particularly helpful when people are starting to make the same points again. Ask for clarification of a particular point if you don't understand it. The chances are that if you don't, others won't either, and anyway you need to understand it to minute it correctly. Once an action has been agreed, check who is going to undertake it. It is not uncommon for a meeting to agree that action is necessary and what that action is without assigning who is responsible for it. You as secretary can ensure that this does not happen. Depending on type of organization, whether you are at a fairly junior level or the role is voluntary and you are an elected member of a committee, it's probably best to discuss these responsibilities with the chair in advance to make sure that your intervention will be welcomed. Now, I am going to share an important warning with you. Friends, when you are the secretary, it's easy to get distracted by an interesting discussion and forget to write anything down. Try to remain focused on your task at all times, even when the discussion is going around in circles. The chair may call on you to recap at any moment. After the meeting. You may think that this is the third phase of a secretary's responsibility during an appointment, and so it is not as important as the first two. But my friends, that's not right. In fact, this is the most important phase and now the work really starts. First and foremost, it's best to start writing minutes as soon as possible after the meeting. However transparent your notes seemed in the meeting, they won't be nearly as clear 24 hours later, and if you leave them for 2 weeks, you will wonder whether that was actually you in the meeting. Sounds funny, isn't it? Trust me, it happens to all the secretaries all the time. Secondly, minutes should follow the order of the agenda. Even if someone revisited a particular topic later on in the meeting, you should include that discussion under the original agenda item. Make sure that you include all the key points made in discussion, any decisions made and actions agreed, together with who is responsible for actions. Third, minutes are almost always written in the past tense and usually in the passive voice. Let us take an example. Mr. Raman Sharma set out that 50 kg of raw material needed to reach the factory by the end of the month. It was agreed that Mr. Shyam Chaturvedi would be responsible for it. While writing the minutes, use the word would rather than will for what is going to happen, especially with formal minutes. Also, it is not mandatory that you should use full names with the title all the time. Example, you may not use Mr. Raman Sharma all the time. It is a matter of style whether you use first names, titles plus surnames or initials to refer to those speaking. Check with the chair or look at past minutes to see what has been done before and use the same approach consistently. Fourth, checking and approving. If you are new to minute writing, it may be advisable to send the minutes to one or two trusted people to check and comment on those before you circulate them more widely. One of these people should probably be the chair, unless they themselves have asked you to send them to someone else first. Once the minutes have been approved by the chair, they can be circulated more widely to the attendees and, if necessary, published on a website. Be aware that attendees may wish to correct any errors, and corrections will need to be incorporated in the next set of minutes. Friends, with this we have come to the end of today's session. Let us take a quick recap to remember what we studied today. We have studied scheduling of appointments, how to write an email to schedule an appointment, 10 tips for appointment scheduling, and the secretary's roles and responsibilities before, during and after the appointment. I am sure you will keep all of this in your mind for a long time and will prove yourself to be an effective secretary at your workplace. Thank you and have a nice day ahead.